Lionhearts, it's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? Excellent. Well, the other day I did a Storytime video and so many people seemed to really like that and request more that I decided today to do another one that involved stories out of my life. And today what the topic is going to be, as you saw in the title, was who was the nicest celebrity I've ever met. Now I decided in this case I wanted to omit people that I would consider friends, because obviously if I would consider them a friend, I probably like them a lot. So Shelley Winters, Eric Singer, people like that, they would be considered out, as well as one of the people involved in this story. This story actually involves two celebrities and that happen to be best friends, and that I am friends with one of them already. So I don't want to include him, but he is a big part of the story, so I would have to say he is a big person I would consider to be one of the nicest celebrities I've ever met. So let me give you two honorable mentions before we get going. The first one has to be Rob Lowe. I worked on a set with Rob Lowe for Parks and Recreation. He was just one of the nicest guys ever. And I did tell that story already, so if you go back and you look up in my catalog on this channel of Rob Lowe's Family Diner, I tell that story. Now, the second honorable mention I want to give is Weird Al Yankovic. Someday I will tell you that story. I know in live streams I've mentioned that story before, but he also was an extremely nice guy. But who we're going to talk about today is the Punisher, Jon Bernthal. He was in Grudge Match, he was in Daredevil, Punisher, Walking Dead, what was that, Wolf of Wall Street? He's been in tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff. So I want to tell you about the event that I happened to be around him, where I went and at the end of it said to myself, that has to be the nicest celebrity I've ever met. One of those people that you actually think to yourself, he deserves everything he's got. So here's the story. So let's go back to, I would say, I think this was probably about 2015, and I met a guy at the Comedy Store on the front patio that my mom was a big fan of, and his name was Sean Kerrigan. And Sean Kerrigan was Stitch on the Young and the Restless soap opera. Now, my mom has been watching Young and the Restless and all the soap operas for the majority of her life, and so he happens to be one of her favorite actors that's ever been on the show. And so he was out there, I just started talking to him, and he said, I know who your mom is. Your mom came to see me when I did stand-up comedy near your town. And she comments on my Twitter and stuff, and he said, you know, it's really cool that she does, because the studio does take stuff that's said on Twitter and stuff, they do take it to heart. So it does help when she says, and her friends and people like that, you know, fans say that, you know, they like what's going on. So Sean was extremely cool, and I think that night when we started talking, we ended up talking for a good hour. And one of the things that came out of that was him giving me a lot of advice on how to make the jump from commercial acting to what they call theatrical acting, which is television and movies. And really, in order to do that, you have to have an agent specifically for theatrical work, and I didn't have one. Sean was nice enough after meeting me that night to offer to hook me up with his agent, as far as like, hey, I'll introduce you and you can send him your stuff, and you know, you just go from there. And he did do that. I got my stuff ready, sent it to him, and his agent basically just said, hey, you need to do a little bit more before an agency our size could take you on, which was totally cool, and that's the way the business works. But I thought, how cool for this guy to use his position in the industry to try and help me. I mean, that's actually how I got my commercial agent, was comedian Ari Shaffir. I called and asked him for advice, and when I told him some of the work that I had booked recently, he hooked me up with his agent, had a meeting, and then they signed me. So Sean had just been a really nice guy from the get-go, gave me his phone number. You know, if I had any questions, I could text him and ask him for opinions on doing auditions and things like that. And then my mom's birthday came around, and one day I sent a text to Sean and I said, hey, I know this is kind of crazy, but do you think it would be possible to get an 8x10 of you and send it to my mom? And her best friend happens to be a huge fan of yours too, so is it possible maybe you could send one to her as well? And he wrote me back and said, hey, Jordan, absolutely. Send me your mom and her friend's address if you can. If you can only do one, just send me one, and send me their names. And I'll get something in the mail to him today. And sure enough, he did. About I would say 2 days later, because it was really fast, my mom called me and said, I just got a package from The Young and the Restless in the mail, and it is 2 signed scripts and signed photos and messages from Sean Kerrigan for me and my best friend Peggy. And I said, I actually asked him to do that, so it was really cool. And she said, the episode that is on TV today is what the script is that I have. So she was beside herself. She was over the moon, and ever since then, Sean has always been one of her favorite people. And to me, he's always been one of my favorite people too, because he's just a nice guy. He didn't have to do any of that stuff, and he did. And I never forgot that. And every time I see him, he's always that way. He's always been super cool. Never treated me, you know, like somebody who is lower than him in the business. And so this particular event, this story that I'm going to tell you involves running into Sean. And so to make ends meet, when I was auditioning and before I was on YouTube, I would sign up for catering gigs. And catering gigs were a great way to make money because you can make a lot of money in one night. In fact, a lot of times I could make my nut for the week, like what I need to make per week to survive, I could make that in one night doing catering because you know, we're based out of Los Angeles. A lot of the catering companies that I would work for would say, hey, we have 2 events next weekend, one in Ojai and one out in Indio. Both of them pay $75 travel. And now what that would mean is that they would pay you an additional $75 on top of your hourly wage in order for you to go to the event. So if it was, you know, an hour-and-a-half drive or whatever, you could either put that towards your gas, or you could keep that money, meet at the kitchen of the caterer, and you could take one of their rental vans and you could ride along with everyone else. Many people would do this because, hey, you get to save extra money. You don't have to drive before and after the event and everything. So a lot of people would do that. And so with that travel bonus, which was usually $75 to $100, then you'd make your hourly, and usually that was probably going to be about $100, and then you might make a tip. Now with catering gigs, you never know what's going to happen, because a lot of catering gigs, especially the ones that you get in this town, are weddings, and people spend a lot of money on weddings, and when it comes time to tip at the wedding, sometimes that's where they decide that they don't want to spend the money. Weddings, birthdays, you name it, retirement parties, you just never know. It really comes down to who the people are, and but that's why a lot of people do catering. Now on the other hand, it's a lonely business. They usually hire 50 or so, sometimes less, servers, depending on how big the event is, because they need trays passing around all the time. So you get a lot of really lazy people, a lot of goof-offs, a lot of people that just disappear in the night, and that's why they drive out there, so they can just like go hop in their car and vanish for a while, and then everybody else has to work. So I really didn't enjoy the catering events, but what I did enjoy was I could put a smile on my face for the whole night, and I could make everything I needed to in one night and then not stress about money the rest of the week. So I signed up for an event in Ojai, and I took the van out to Ojai, and when we got there, they gathered us all in a circle and they said, okay, so what we're doing tonight, just to fill you guys in on what the event is, this is a surprise birthday party for Jon Bernthal, the actor. His wife is throwing this birthday party for him, and this was just, I want to say, two years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I know whatever vlog that I filmed that day, I did mention at the end that I had worked that party. So anyway, Jon didn't know this was going on, and then a couple hours before the party, his wife let him know what was happening, and he was beside himself. He was so happy. He came out and he walked around his property in Ojai, and he found each and every person working, anyone that was in any kind of uniform, and he went up and personally thanked each and every one of us, came up and said, thank you for working my birthday. This means more to me than you know, that my wife would throw something like this and that my friends can all come. So thank you for giving up your night to make my party special. And he did that for everybody. He didn't go up to a group of people and do it. He went up individually to each and every person that was working and said, hey, I'm Jon. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And he went through that for everybody. I was really amazed. I thought that was pure class. And throughout the night, he would, you know, if he walked past you, he would say hello. It wasn't like most events where they just, you know, if it's their party, they ignore the staff or anything. Let's wait for this to finish. He was a genuinely friendly guy, and he was walking around having fun all night long, and it was just a cool event to see. Now, it did dawn on me at that time that I knew, Sean had told me that his best friend in the world was Jon Bernthal, and they had done my friend Dean Del Rey's podcast together. So I had heard that podcast. I knew how tight they were. They go to the boxing gym together, they train together, they work out, you know, they just hang, they're boys. And immediately I thought, oh my gosh, it's very possible that Sean's gonna be here. Now, on one side, it's kind of cool because you get to see your friend, but on the other side, when you're trying to be an actor, trying to be a comedian, trying to do things in Hollywood, and you meet people through those avenues, it's kind of embarrassing to run into them when they're celebrating a party and you're working the party. And I always remembered hearing a favorite comedian of mine, Joey Diaz, also a friend of mine, telling stories on his podcast about how sad it would be that you would see people, you know, 10 years down the line that you used to audition with, and now they were trying to stay afloat by working catering gigs. And I remember him saying like how bad he felt for those people, that they were still in their 40s relegated to doing that stuff. And I was in my 30s, but I still kind of already had that mentality of like, I don't want to be doing this any longer than I have to. And so the party started, and I was kind of in a supervisory role for the station that I was working at. And as I'm there, Sean Kerrigan comes walking up. It was like basically like a buffet style setup where we would serve the food, and Sean and his date come walking up, and I'm immediately like, oh man, I felt like that small, you know. And he looks up and he goes, Jordan, oh my God, dude, what are you doing here? And I go, I'm just working. He goes, dude, so good to see you. He goes, did you meet Jon yet? And I go, yeah, he kind of walked around and said hi to everybody in the staff. And he goes, no, you didn't meet Jon. He goes, no, I got to introduce you to Jon as my friend. He goes, come on, can you get away from this station for like 2 minutes? And I'm like, well, I'm the one, you know, kind of managing it. So I was like, yeah, I can. He goes, dude, I really got to introduce you to Jon. He'll love you. And so he walks me through the party, takes me back to like this private, not a private room, but they had built like a tent for smokers and stuff to go hang out so that it wouldn't bother people that weren't smoking. And I think he was in there saying hello, because he was mingling, Jon was mingling through the whole party, saying hello to people. And I think I went in there, and Sean goes, Jon, you got to meet my friend Jordan. He's a comic. I know him from the Comedy Store. And Jon, this is his reaction, puts his arms out and goes, any friend of Sean's a friend of mine. Give me a hug, man. Gives me a hug, and then says, dude, I have an amazing amount of respect for anyone that does stand-up comedy. Dude, I could never do that. He goes, I don't know how you guys do that. You guys are a totally different animal. My hat's off to you. And he goes, like I said, any friend of Sean's is a friend of mine. He goes, don't act like you're working tonight, man. Enjoy yourself. You know, as long as you don't, you know, I don't want you to get in trouble. But he goes, I want this to be a free-feeling party, so just have fun, you know. And then, then they brought him up to do a, basically like to say something to all of his guests. And he goes up, and this is what he says on stage. This is how you know he's a class act. The first thing he says is, first and foremost, I have to thank my wife, Erin, because without Erin, I would be nothing. I would be no one, and I would be nothing. Erin was coming to see me in plays, in theater, when there were more people on the stage than there were in the crowd. She never quit believing in me. You're my heart and soul, and you and our kids are the biggest thing in my life, and I just can't thank everyone enough for coming. And he gave this big grand speech thanking everyone, and you're just like, what the heck? This guy is an A-list celebrity, as humble as it gets. Well, then all of a sudden the police show up, because the party had been going for a while, and they come knocking at the gate, and Jon ends up coming out, talking to them and inviting them in to get, some water, refreshments, eat some food, and just a totally nice guy overall. And in the end, I thought to myself, this guy wasn't just being nice because I was Sean's friend. He had proven earlier in the night that he's just a nice guy anyway. He came out and said hello individually to each member of the staff that was working at his house. And then at the end of the night, when it was time to go, I saw him go up to my supervisor, and he said, how many people are in your staff tonight? And the guy told him, I don't know what the number was, but Jon said, okay, please don't let anybody go yet. I'll be back in just a second. And he came back with a stack of envelopes and had a $50 bill in every single envelope for everybody that worked there, from the dishwashers to the guys that were loading up the vans to the servers to anybody that was there. If they were included in that number, he put a $50 bill in there for them. And to me, that's just like, that's an absolute sign of class. We're losing me on the light here, aren't we? The light shifted, but yeah, to me, that's just an absolute sign of class. And the guy, you know, that's what they call integrity, is what you do when other people are not watching. He did not know when he was saying hello to everybody that any of us would ever make a vlog telling that he is the nicest celebrity they've ever met. But I'll tell you, for a big portion of my lost life, I was going to Dodger games quite a bit, and I had season tickets. And my friends that I sat next to, I think they got bored as much as I did, and they started collecting autographs. And it became somewhat of a pastime and an obsession just to see who you could meet, who you could interact with, who you could get a picture with. And so for years I did this. And for the years I had bad experiences and great experiences. And so I had met a lot of people. I've always been a pretty good judge of character. And you know, just knowing Sean Kerrigan, it shouldn't have surprised me that Jon would be such a cool guy. But the next time you watch a movie with that guy, next time you watch Grudge Match or The Punisher or Daredevil or Walking Dead or anything that he was ever in, I want you to think about this story about how that guy gave back to people, and how the first person that he thanked when it came time to addressing all of his friends was he was thanking his wife for being always in his corner and for throwing him the party. Class act. Hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. Go watch a Jon Bernthal movie. Go watch a Sean Kerrigan movie. These guys are great actors and they're really great people. So now you have a different side and a different story. And I'm not sure if I was even allowed to share that story or not, because it was a birthday private event or whatever, but we'll say that the statute of limitations on that paperwork is probably over, and maybe Jon Bernthal won't get mad that I'm telling everybody he's such a good guy. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.